Another fascinating property, a real investigation.
Dam surveys. The only way to stop damp is to trace water to its source.
So, you're a doctor, I'm a surveyor, but the thought process is quite similar. We have to look at the symptoms, we have to look at the root causes and bring everything together. And in this case, what you were describing was a large pool of water in the center of your unheated, what was originally stables, but open to the house from time to time. And it turned out that sometime in the past you had a leak upstairs which flooded, but not through the ceiling of the stables, albeit just above. But you had to use a lot of material, old towels, old curtains, old material, which was then drying, and the vapor from that was passing through the rest of the property and finding its way to the cold zone. And that lead pipe would have caused heat loss, which would have created a perfect environment for condensation to form. And I believe that's what's happening, because there's clear signs of condensation downstairs. The plastic up against the wall where you got condensation behind the plastic, the mould, the condensation, we could see the heat loss in that subfloor void. And as perfectly illustrated by one of your lodgers, a lot of cooking in the kitchen, but with no ventilation at all. And keeping the heat downstairs means that what's going to happen is that you're going to get all the vapor, possibly even some from drying clothes, and it's going to condense downstairs. You had Donkioporia expansa, in one of the fungi from out in the garden. The spores came in, and it only grows where you've got dampness, and condensation is the most common means of causing dampness, sufficient dampness for Donkioporia to grow. It's relatively superficial, it's not structural, it's a white rot, it's very slow growing. I would trim it back. You don't necessarily need to remove the timber. Once it's dry, it will stop growing. You can treat it with, Octobore is the classic, but most wood treatments will work for it. But you need to bring down the internal vapor. Simplest solution is to run a dehumidifier. It will keep your electricity costs down. The three reasons are that all the energy comes out as heat with a 50% bonus, a bit like an air source heat pump. Second one is if you've got lower vapor levels, a cold room will feel warmer than the equivalent room with high vapor levels. So you can reduce your heating bill, or you can turn the thermostat down. And the third thing is that condensation on external walls will cause heat loss, so you will feel colder. So dehumidifier, in a big property, you might even think of getting two, but make sure it's a 20-litre dehumidifier, and I would have it constantly draining into the sink. I would think about putting in an extractor fan from the kitchen to the outside. Problem with that is it still needs to be used, and not everyone will use it. But a dehumidifier does more or less the same thing. I run one 24/7, and we don't always use the kitchen extractor fan ourselves, and we do dry clothes internally. And yet we keep the dew point around the outside temperature as measured as a degree centigrade. So have a look at the data loggers now. So here's the data logger system. If you can download the files onto this website. It's called damp.ai/detect. And I've given these number 1, 2, 3. The Chinese is a translation of unnamed. So obviously I don't know which is which, but that's fine. I'm selecting number 3 and comparing it to number 1. And the temperature was 6.6 degrees centigrade. But if you remember, the temperature in your understair void was, it went down to almost 1 degree centigrade at one point. So, but this was internal. And we actually saw condensation forming behind plastic. So we know that there was quite a lot of condensation taking place. So to create the graph, you press the graph function. And wherever this surface relative humidity, though the green line is a surface relative humidity, whenever the surface relative humidity hits 100%, there's condensation taking place. So a lot of times during the period when you're getting condensation, and this zone above 85% is where mould risk is for when you have long periods of time. So that's why you're getting mould there. If you look at the blue line here, that's the vapor. That's the dew point line, but it's a measure of the amount of vapor in air, expressed as degrees centigrade. You can do it as grams per cubic meter, vapor pressure, or as dew point. And that's useful because you want to be keeping the internal vapor below the outside temperature. Your internal temperature is only just above the outside for a long period of time. So be aware. I think really the simplest thing is what we discussed at the time of the survey. Use a dehumidifier. You're essentially warming other parts of the property and keeping the lower ground floor where you've got the kitchen and the vapor from cooking without a extractor fan there. You're keeping that cooler, and that means that you've got a risk of high surface relative or high relative humidity. So it's actually going to be quite simple for you in this case. I mean, I personally would consider putting in an extractor fan into the kitchen, but problem with that is not everyone uses it anyway. If you have you want to have a 20 litre plus dehumidifier. 20 litres actually probably the sweet spot. 20 litre dehumidifier. I would get a different type of hygrometer that you can just see at any point in time and just make sure the internal dew point is below the outside temperature. And run a dehumidifier 24/7, either dripping into the sink or with a canister that you make it a daily habit of taking it out, or assign that to somebody. Put it on your chart, your list of things to do. And I think that will be the simplest solution, and that will remove the issue. And that area to the right, the stable area to the right, where you were getting the vapor forming condensation, you might even think of about putting a dehumidifier in there. They don't really cost much to run. They cost about £1 a day. And the other thing is I would consider using a desiccant type. That's for low temperature. So anything below about 15 degrees centigrade, constantly below 15 degrees centigrade, you're going to get a better through flow of condensation by using a desiccant type dehumidifier. When Putin went to war, I had one running, and it just adds a little bit of heat. Probably costs a little bit more, but it has a much higher removal rate for vapor in winter in particular. You might get two, one normal one and one desiccant for cooler zones. So in summary, the condensation is your primary issue. There were some external issues with render and paintwork. Nothing major there. Primary issue is condensation, which was the cause of the pool of water and the rot as well. The interesting thing is you also have a type of woodworm called wood weevil. It's normally associated with cellar rot rather than Donkioporia expansa, but it can be potentially. Either way, it's not going to cause structural damage.
Dam surveys. The only way to stop damp is to trace water to its source.